welcome to this episode of Arthritis at Home. I am so excited to be in the studio today with Dr. Antonio Aviña-Zubieta. Welcome to the studio, Dr. Aviña.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's always great to have a chance to bend your ear and to learn from you as well. And I think everyone, if they don't already know you, Dr. Aviña, let me just give them a quick Cole's notes on who you are, where you come from. So you, I think your accent is a bit of a giveaway, frankly. You were born and raised literally from infancy all the way through your medical training in Mexico, in Guadalajara. And then you did further training at the Autonomous National University of Mexico and have been a national scientist in Mexico since 1998. And then we lured you up here to Canada, where you continued your formal training as a clinical research fellow at the University of Alberta. You went on to do a master's degree in experimental medicine at that same university. And you went on to do your PhD at the University of British Columbia in experimental medicine and epidemiology. And so you sit before us a full-fledged doctor, specialist in rheumatology, and senior scientist of Arthritis Research Canada, and you're also now the division head of Division of Rheumatology, pardon me, at the University of British Columbia. So I now I have to take a breath after all of that. We are so happy to have you in the studio.
Thank you for the kind introduction and the served invitation.
Hey, so here today, Dr. Aviña, we're going to talk specifically about a research study that you're leading. And it's really focused on something very specific. It's running in British Columbia only. But once we know the results, of course, we'll be able to share that knowledge far and wide so that everyone can benefit. But first, let's start at the simplest, probably most straightforward question. Tell us about this particular research you're currently working on. I know the acronym in research, everyone likes to give their project a fancy acronym, and the acronym for your study is INTACT. So there's your intro, and there is your invitation to tell us all about INTACT.
Thank you again. INTACT starts, the definition of the study is actually retinal toxicity and hydroxychloroquine therapy. This is, if you look letters for INTACT, they're already there. And the purpose of the study is actually to answer a very simple question that is very relevant to actually patients and clinicians. Hydroxychloroquine, in the old days also known as Plaquenil, is the most prescribed medication for rheumatic diseases. It has been in the market for so many years. It's such a great drug, but has one big concern for patients and physicians. It may affect the retina, which is the back part of the eye, because the medication may deposit there. And if you don't pick up that on time, it may lead you to vision loss. And that's one of the main drawbacks of patients not willing to take this medication. The question that we try to answer is, actually, how frequent is this? It's actually very rare based on the literature, but half of the patients actually don't take the medication because of this fear. And we try to answer is, what is the frequency of this complication in patients who take the medication for a long time? And if you develop that, what are the risk factors? And also, once you develop that, what happened after you discontinue the medication?
Right.
That's the three questions that we wanted to answer.
Yeah. So interestingly, you just described why it's so important for adults living with either lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, who are the people you're looking for to recruit into this study. You've really described for me as a person living with rheumatoid arthritis, Antonio, why the study is so important. Your results will help someone like me best understand what my risk is, what my real risk is of developing retinal toxicity. As you say, we think it's very low, but because you haven't actually asked this question very specifically to these two patient populations, a person like me can't actually take that information because it's not known and then weigh benefits and risks. So what you learn from this study is going to help me first learn about possible retinal toxicity with hydroxychloroquine use, how rare it is, how infrequent it is, and how I balance that risk in my decision making. So I need to best understand that it may not pose risk or it may pose risk, and then be able to take action from a treatment plan. And this is not just true in this therapy, I think, Dr. Aviña, it's true for probably most therapies, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So how can someone participate in your study? We were talking about the principles of the rights and responsibilities of being Canadian, and one of them is altruism, one of them is volunteering. Simply put, volunteering for this study is going to do something for the next generation of patients, as well as for yourself.
Correct. So actually, what this study requires is very minimal. We normally, in clinical practice, when patients start taking this medication, guidelines recommend to send the patient once a year for an eye screening. Usually it's done by an ophthalmologist, often by an optometrist. Ideally, it should be done by a retina specialist, which is a subspecialty of ophthalmology, because the diagnosis relies on interpretation of a specific image, and you need training for that. Sometimes we find quite often in clinical practice that people who are not experienced or expertise on the field may overcall the diagnosis of retinal toxicity already present. And that makes the patient to stop the medication that is working well, that is actually very effective, very cheap, and prevents complications. So what we're doing rather differently is, instead of going to the regular ophthalmologist as part of your regular care, we created a network of retina specialists in the entire province of BC, where you will go once a year, as you normally do, and they will do a special state-of-the-art assessment of your retina screening. The screen that was 20 years ago, 50 years ago, it has changed. Now we have new technology that allows people to be detected very early with minimal changes start to happen. We believe that if you actually do that early detection, there's no progression, which in the past with the technology, when we made the diagnosis, it was already too late to make that call. And that didn't matter if you stop the medication, the visual loss progressed to not, it was irreversible. So now the only difference is you're going to change to a different specialist. Once a year, you have to answer 2-page questionnaires, which is probably take you 2 minutes to do it. You just have to be willing to travel. Maybe if you don't go to your regular ophthalmologist, maybe to a different center, and that's the only difference. It's once a year for 5 years.
Okay, yeah, so not that onerous, obviously, in terms of your time, but so important in terms of what you're able to contribute as a person who's participating in a research study. I always, as a patient, view these things as huge opportunities to get better, more specialized care, frankly. I mean, you're saying you've developed this specialized network, so people who qualify for the study get into this network, which is, I think, an incredible opportunity.
Absolutely. And a second gain, which is, again, as you mentioned before, looking for the next generation, how they're going to benefit. We are going to collect probably thousands of images, and everybody knows now what artificial intelligence can do. In the future, we hope that with these images, we could train a computer where you can actually, the computer could probably detect better who has changes. So in the future, it's going to be possible probably that you can go get your image done, and instead of waiting to be signed by a retina specialist, a computer will detect there are changes, and then a physician will go and see specifically that that image and then you can make the diagnosis without the need of having access to a specialist in retina right away all the time.
Right.
So that's what the
That's
future is going to be.
amazing. That's what
what the future is
technology
gonna be.
can do to accelerate learning and also action, right? Taking medical action as both a patient and a physician. So, Dr. Aviña, at the end of this video, by the way, we're going to share the contact information. If someone is an adult living with lupus or rheumatoid arthritis who's been taking hydroxychloroquine or is taking hydroxychloroquine, they can reach out to your study coordinator. So we'll provide that information at the end of this video. But finally, my last question to you, I think it's super important to people who tune into our programming, Dr. Aviña, and that's so clearly with a partnership with Arthritis Consumer Experts, with your own Arthritis Patient Advisory Board, we get the word out on the results once you know them to our network of fellow patients, consumers, interested family members, other caregivers. What do you do with the results on the scientific side of things? How do you broaden the knowledge within your own community?
First of all, when patients go to the physician and you prescribe a medication, and patients have to go through the side effects, and they ask you, what are my complications risk? What is the risk of me developing this? We actually just say it's very rare because we don't have a firm number.
Yeah.
And then by now, if we get the results, we just publish, the community at large in the world will see the results and as a result will be the average risk for everybody, because we will include everybody in the province who takes the medication for at least 5 years, and then subsequently assess once a year for 5 years. So we will be able to give a number. What is the actual risk for me? And that applies when the results get published. It will be spreading to conferences, scientific papers, lay summaries for patients. So that knowledge will be spread and be used by anyone in the world to assess what is my actual risk that represents the average risk for population. That's what we normally do.
Okay.
And of course, we may impact the guidelines because, in fact, for instance, in Canada, right now, everybody has to do it every year as soon as you start taking the medications. In the US, it's different. They actually start screening people after 5 years because they know that the risk in the first 5 years is zero based on preliminary data. So we may change guidelines and they may change for the entire world once we have the actual true data risk on this.
Yeah, and I think from a patient perspective, it's super important that I want to say standardization, that there be a common collective knowledge across the world on something like this, because the internet is boundaryless, it's borderless. And if I go on the internet looking for information about retinal toxicity with hydroxychloroquine use, and I see one guideline over here, and I see another guideline over here, sometimes it shakes your confidence a bit, frankly.
Absolutely.
And you wonder, well, oh, my doctor's on top of it, or maybe my doctor's not on top of it. So I think what you describe is this huge, broad sharing of knowledge once you know the results of this study is going to help people like me a ton. We cannot thank you enough, Dr. Aviña. The hope is that this video with you, that this interview and the information contained in it is going to help sort of turn people on to the work that you're doing. They can tell a friend if they know someone. If it affects them, they can go to your research coordinator, contact information, and hopefully we can get as many people participating in the study who qualify, of course, as possible. So thank you so much. Thanks for taking on this project. It's super, super important. As you say, hydroxychloroquine is used more commonly than any other medication. And it's just such an important piece of work. We thank you so much. And we know that you're involving consumers in your study as well. They're part of your research team and have helped you identify questions, concerns that patients may have, and sort of problem solving what they may be in advance of rolling out the study. So a huge thanks to your patient partners in this research as well.
My pleasure. I would like just to make a
Yes.
comment here, if you mind. Your actual participation actually has to be done through your rheumatologist. They already know about the study.
Okay.
They just forget often that they have a specific network of retina specialists. So if you're a patient who has rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, has been taking the medication for more than 5 years, you are eligible. And the next appointment you're going to do with your eye specialist, you need to discuss with the rheumatologist.
Okay.
Can you send me to the retina specialist of the network? They know already, and that's the only thing they're going to do. We will contact you later, just to get the information we need. You don't need to connect with us. It's your rheumatologist the trigger of your regular care who does the referral.
Okay,
and that's
perfect.
what you need to do.
That's great. So we're going to make that call to action really clear at the end here. And we'll also direct them to the Arthritis Research Canada website, because I know there's information about the study on the website in case people just have a general interest and want to learn more.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
for
And
that.
I really thank you in advance for those who really willing to
It's
volunteer
super,
and be part of it.
it's super amazing. I can say that the research projects I've been a participant in over the years, I've had RA for 35 years. At the end of those studies, you really feel like you're part of it. You really feel like you're part of advancing science, which just makes you feel good. I'm pretty sure there's a placebo effect to that too.
The end user is always our patients, and I think this is what makes our research so interesting.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better. Great place to close off our interview. Thank you again, Dr. Aviña, for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you for letting us know about this research study. And I hope everyone in our audience can share this far and wide, and we can ensure that as many British Columbians who are affected by this and are eligible participate. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next time.
See you next time.